So greetings to all, this is Vavuniya and today we have Lt Col Satish Vaidya with us. It's an honor to have you here with us, sir, today, and thank you so much for your time and the contributions that you're going to make today. Sir, the audience would love to know about the special heliborne operations in the jungles of Vavuniya and the operation which you led during Oppa 1 and the IPKF in the Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Vaibhav. It's an honor for me to be with you and Frontier India. I was in Sri Lanka for almost 2 years and 3 months. The beginning that I saw was after the main Jaffna operation had ended, and I joined in December. And we were very actively involved in heliborne operations, special heliborne operations in the Vavuniya jungles, where the LTTE had set up their own hides now after that their defeat in Jaffna. Now, special heliborne operations was something that our unit has been doing for a long time before, practicing them. It involved composite loads of 18 men per helicopter, with an officer, a radio set, weapons and ammunition equally distributed, so that if any particular helicopter got left out, then we were still an effective force with whatever we had in. And we also ensured that all eggs were never in one basket. So all officers or all important weapons would be all spread out in 3 helicopters. So we had 18 men per helicopter with 3 helicopters going into the jungle. We were based in Palali airfield in Jaffna. The helicopters were based there right with us. So a total of 54 of us would go into the jungle at a time, stay for 2 nights in the jungle and come back on the 3rd day. So the method was that our helicopters would take off together, like you see in the movies, 3 of them going in a stick. And the general area that we had to land or get off was a kulam. Kulam is a jungle pond surrounded by a grassy patch.
Okay.
Because the grassy patch was because trees could not grow because of flooding of the that part during rains. Now we never knew whether the ground was level and even enough for the helicopters to land, because if one of the wheels finds a gap of 6 inches, 10 inches, the whole helicopter could tilt to such an extent that the rotor hits the ground.
Okay.
Now, to prevent that, the helicopters would hover at 1 meter height above the ground, and we would jump out.
Okay.
Now, the first helicopter, the first one to jump out would invariably be me, because I had to be there to ensure everybody came. The first helicopter would drop their 18. We would spread out and cover the vulnerable part of that landing zone. Then the second helicopter would come. Spreading out also helped us get out of that rotor disc. Now, if there's anything that went wrong, the rotor suddenly came low, we would be out of it. So safety, and the tail rotor was one thing which we had to really take care of, because that was at a height of our head. So one had to absolutely avoid the tail. Second and third helicopters landed their loads, and the helicopters would take off. In the meantime, there would be one Akbar Mi-25 helicopter orbiting around, just in case there was some LTTE opposition on the ground which needed extra fire support. But that's the only fire support we could bank on. We were far away from any other artillery or physical reinforcements.
Right.
After we got off, we had decided that, okay, from this column we have to move on a certain bearing. And within about 200-300 meters, the jungle would start. And the jungle was like entering a dark room. The trees would be 150 feet tall, canopy covering the entire space above overhead. And it used to be dark, it was hot and humid. Wildlife was there, but we never saw any big wildlife. We saw elephant dung at a number of places. It seemed to be fresh. Jungle streams, you would have pits dug in them, and they were obviously made by elephants looking for water. So we learned how to get water from a dry stream bed by digging, and it helped us a couple of times.
Okay.
We drank water from the column, which looked like mojito, thick green fluid, and we had to filter it through 4 layers of a handkerchief. And we thought it was safe after that, but we got a lot of intestinal stomach problems and stuff. So rather than the big wildlife, the small minute wildlife was more dangerous to us, like the stomach, the mosquitoes. And at one place, while walking through the jungle, we halted during the daytime, luckily. And we spread out ground sheets, lay down to rest for a little while, because anytime we could halt, lying down was the best. I mean, we used to walk from morning till evening. It was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Now, if there was a LTTE camp 200 meters to our right, and we used to walk on a bearing because there were no landmarks. If you look back, you couldn't recognize that where you came from. So there was no way that you could go back unless you took a magnetic bearing and walked along it. So going back needed a magnetic reverse bearing. Now, moving through these jungles was exhausting. We had loads, and we had loads with food for 3 days. We had our ground sheet, which was absolutely essential to lie down on, and water bottle, and ammunition. Now, an AK-47 fires automatic. It has 30 round magazine, and it has a rate of fire of 600 rounds per minute. So if you fired a burst, one magazine would go out in 3 seconds. Now we'll go. That's a separate thing, but that needed that we had to carry some extra ammunition for that. Now, after combing through whatever that one line that we saw, and you could, in a dense jungle, you could see about 7 to 10 meters on either side, nothing more. So like I said, if there was an LTTE camp 200-300 meters to your right or left, you could just walk past it and not know that it was there. But in one particular operation, we hit them.
Okay.
Now on 21st of March 88, I had just come back from a month of leave, landed at Palali, got off from the N32, and I found my team 2IC, Captain Tinaikar that time, rushing off for a briefing to David quarters. So I didn't know anything because I still had my holiday stuff to be kept there, and I had to pick up my weapons and get into the groove of things. Now, when he came back, I was reasonably ready, and they told me, Satish, you are going into the jungles now. I said, fine, great. So from Chennai, or that time Madras, landing in Palali and heading into the jungle in a matter of an hour or two. So that's how things used to happen. We were always ready for some surprises. Now when Captain Tinaikar came back, I was also a captain at that time, but I was a senior captain, so I was the team commander. When we had a small briefing with our Special Forces commander, that time Colonel Sukhiman.
Okay.
During the briefing, he told me, you're going into this jungle, this and whatever. So knowing that it's a thick jungle, out of intuition, I asked, if we see somebody in the jungle, do we shoot first or talk first? Or do we talk first or shoot first? So Colonel Sukhiman was a great guy. He says, you shoot first. So I said, okay, great. Now, we didn't know that we were going to actually do it, that within a couple of hours. So 3 helicopters went, we landed at Udiyar Kadukulam and we set course at 110 degrees and we started walking into the jungle. Captain Tinaikar was leading, I was the team commander, so my headquarters was next, followed by, I think, the third troop. At about 4 o'clock, I think we landed at about noon or so, and after about 4 hours of walk. Now in the jungle, in the humid heat, one person got exhaustion.
Okay.
Heat exhaustion, and he says, I can't walk anymore, I need to rest. Now if we know that we got to be in the jungle for another 2 nights and a long time to go, if you have somebody who falls sick, is going to be a big liability. So we said, okay, let's halt, let's give him a refreshing ORH, that drink, dissolve it in water, and
The ORS.
ORH.
Yeah.
So we gave him that and asked him to sip it slowly and take a few deep breaths and relax. And while we were doing that, and first thing we do that when we reached a place where we got to halt is take off your pack and rest on it, on the ground. So we'd done that and this guy was drinking his ORH. Tinaikar was right in front and his team was navigating, his troop was navigating. So he heard some sounds in front. So he informed me and he says, I'm going to investigate. I said, fine. I mean, there's nothing much to argue about. So he went ahead and I heard a long burst of an AK, automatic fire. And this guy who was fatigued, he lost his fatigue, it went away, disappeared. We put on our packs again and we rushed ahead because we are always ready to move at a very short notice all the time,
Right.
while we were awake at least. Even at night when we slept, we were reasonably alert. We went ahead and found that that troop, that party of theirs, had shot one female militant, and they had collected around a well, drawing water or doing something, and so this female leader, her name was Durga, she was killed, and the others ran away. We couldn't get anything, we couldn't find anything. And being 4 o'clock, and one of my NCO, Havaldar Jabbar Singh, got shot in his left base of his left thumb.
Okay.
Now we had to evacuate him. He was bleeding seriously. Our doctor was with us. Then Captain Venur, he got a Sena medal for all his actions in the Jaffna operation. He saved a lot of lives and did a wonderful job. Now, doctor being there, he patched him up, and we said, okay, it's 4:30 now. By the time we searched cursorily the whole area, we said it's now time to get back because we can't go further because we don't know if a helicopter can land anywhere ahead. But we know it definitely landed where we got off.
You're right.
So we'll call them there itself. And we headed back, but we could not reach before it became dark. And when it becomes dark, the jungle is impassable. There are roots and vines and obstacles on the ground which you can't see. And moving is at a real snail's pace. And at night, our biggest fear is losing contact. The front element, after it crosses an obstacle, tends to move faster or relatively faster, and the people at the back get bottled up.
Right.
And the gap increases. And if the leading person's got a compass, the following people only can see the next guy 5 or 7 meters ahead, and the shadow is moving, so they're following. So if contact is broken, we keep doing counting drill during the night moving in jungle. I'll tell you about that when we come to the next operation that we, interesting one. So we halted in the jungle for the night and resumed in the morning. The helicopter came, picked up the casualty and went away. But then we were also subsequently pulled out because we had lost surprise in that particular area. So there's no point in hanging around there anymore. So the helicopter pilots did a wonderful job. Now when they are hovering at 1 meter, the helicopter is continuously getting lighter. Right. Each man jumping out is about 80 kilos less. So the helicopter tends to rise. More, right. So they have to bring it back. So we were used to that. That fluctuation is there. We jump at 1 meter height, maybe less, maybe a little more. So we had to land on our 2 feet, break the impact, not to get hurt, and you got to walk around for the next 2 days. So no chance of allowing yourself to get hurt. This is what special heliborne ops and jungles were for us. Now, in around April, somebody captured surface-to-air missiles from the LTTE. SAM, okay. Those shoulder-fired SAM 7, I think. So when they were captured, the helicopters would be at a very great risk. They may not be able to fire them inside the jungle or when the helicopter is over the jungle, but when we are at open space around a column, when we are coming into land and take off, then they would definitely be at threat. The helicopters that landed us in the jungle would go to another place where the second team would be waiting for de-induction. Now when it came to de-induction, we selected a patch which was level, it was firm, there were no obstacles, and the approach and takeoff paths were free and everything. So that was kind of ingrained in us. If you had to land a helicopter, you knew that what all was required to get it done. So we would mark that place with a cloth panel marked H. So we'd light up a smoke candle giving the indication of direction of the wind. So helicopter comes against the wind and then lands. When it lands, the whole stick gets in. Now, like if I was the first out of the first helicopter, I would be last in the last helicopter. So I would make sure that everybody is gone. And being the commander of my helicopter, now I had to stand at the tail to make sure that nobody went behind and was endangered by the tail rotor. So the flying in and flying out was a great experience because it took almost about 40-45 minutes of flying time to take us from Jaffna to Vavuniya jungles. And I would be sitting on the edge of the helicopter, one leg normally hanging out, and my arm interlinked with a soldier inside. And it used to be a kind of a meditative piece that we're just going in, that time has come to a halt, and everybody is deep in their own thoughts. Everybody is looking tense, but nobody is trying to catch the person's eye in front. But if one did, then they gave a feeble smile, a thumbs up, and they'd reassure each other, and we are together in this. Right. And that's how helicopter-borne operations were. It was thrilling when they happened, and you see them in the movies, but feeling them, that adrenaline was different. The next interesting operation I had was in Vavuniya in June 89 when we were deployed. We moved around all the time. So we had one operation here, and before we could settle down there, we used to be out and into the second place. So in Vavuniya, we used to operate in the night in jungles because that area was quite infested. 9 Para Commando had a lot of successes in that area, a lot of encounters, because after the Jaffna operation, things in Jaffna Peninsula quietened down quite a bit, and they were sporadic, very isolated incidents. Now in Vavuniya, we had to go out every night. If you didn't go out somewhere, we used to feel that no, we haven't done our bit, we haven't earned our bread today. So you could sit around and escape, beat the whole thing, but it never appealed to any of us. Now, the first night we were walking through a jungle, it was wet with dew. The lead scout was Naik Rajendra, and the two scouts, a squad commander and me. I used to be 4th or 5th in the order of march. So while walking, it was dark, it was quiet, and except for an occasional counting drill, like to ensure that we haven't broken contact, there was nothing, nobody spoke anything.
Okay.
But all of a sudden, people started shouting loudly in the middle of that while we were walking. And it was so unusual that it's like a sudden excitement. And I had to go ahead. I mean, it was just 20-25 meters ahead maximum. When I reached there, I found that Rajendra had come out of the jungle into a field, because that's where the jungle had ended.
Okay.
We were still in the jungle. Rajendra had touched the edge of a field where there was a low naked live wire, electric wire.
Okay.
It was meant to keep the wild boar and animals out of the field from damaging it. But since we were all wet and he touched the wire, he was suffering an electric shock. And a continuous shock of 220 volts or whatever, you get a shock and you pull your hand out immediately. But this guy was stuck to the wire because of his momentum, forward momentum,
So
or
could not
weight and
withdraw.
whatever. And then maybe he fell on the wire after that, maybe. And when we touched him to pull him to lift him up, I got a shock. So I know that he was suffering from a shock. Now, alone, I couldn't even pull him up. So 2 of us, or maybe 3 of us, we said, okay, we do a grab and pull. So he said, okay, 1, 2, 3, tuck, and we pulled him out. And the contact broke, and now Rajendra was not in contact with the wire. But the prolonged shock, I don't know how many seconds it would have been, but it must have been quite a lot, because he was paralyzed.
Okay.
He couldn't move, he could barely speak, and at night, I don't know how we communicated, but we realized that this guy has to be evacuated because you don't know how bad he is. So we called off that operation, because that night we said we lost surprise as it is, a lot of shouting and chaos, confusion. So we called that farmer, made him switch off the power to the wires, went into his farm, found a tractor, put this guy on the trailer, and brought him back. Second night, Rajendra was deposited in hospital. He was admitted there. Within a week, he recovered. Luckily, good for him. Next night, we moved back into the jungle and said, okay, we got to lay an ambush. Now, like I said, it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. You don't know who's LTT, you don't know where they are, you don't know anything. So we hit a prominent track. It was about 2 meters wide, maybe. Bicycles could go up and down, and we found places all along it, the sides of it, on one side, so that if you fired, you shouldn't hit your own guys on the other side. So we made sure that it was safe that way. And we waited. We reached there at night, set up our positions and waited. Now, there are people who would say that LTT could smell us, and because our cooking oil is different and this, that. In such a thick jungle, I never encountered that because we never got so close to LTT. Maybe in buildings, in built up areas, they may have been closer and would know that this is an IPKF. So we couldn't go in undercover in CVs or anything. But here, nobody detected our presence. And people started moving up and down after a certain time in the morning. Now, we decided to get all of them from the track and put them inside a clearing in the jungle. Because if person comes from here, sees that we are there and goes to the other side, no LTT is going to come from there.
Right.
So, which went for both ways. So we started collecting people, and at about 12 or so, one cyclist came along, and we used to just say, "Psst, wait, Tambi, idhar aao," in Tamil. So a chap would get surprised, he'd look at you, and then follow you quietly. So we collected a few school children, some old men, women, some Muslims wearing their caps. So they're not LTT. So there were 4 or 5 young people also. So they said, we are civilians, we are students, and this and that. So we said, fine, all of you come. So one person was guarding them, making sure nobody ran away or did anything and made make noise. But when the cycle fellow came and he was called, he panicked, he left his cycle there and he ran. So this soldier who was there, I was sitting and daydreaming wherever I was, under a bush somewhere. Now, when that fellow started shouting, Tambi, come here, and all that, he jumped out, took his SLR and fired a few rounds from his hip, bang, bang, bang. But he missed him because we didn't find anybody wounded or dead over there. So now all that shouting had happened, surprise was lost, there was no point in continuing there. We checked the bicycle. Now that fellow was carrying a bag with LTT posters and documents.
Okay.
So he was an LTT courier. He was a messenger boy. And a very small fry as far as we were concerned. So now had we got him, we would have taken him as a prize and said, look, we got this fellow. But since he went away, I was upset. I said, this is disappointing. So we took all the 17 guys, people we had selected, gathered over there. We said, we took them all back. So long procession of our scouts and patrol and these 17 people guarded by our guys, and we went to the 9 para was there and we were attached with them. So we handed them all to 9 para and said, look, these are the guys we've got. So you could screen them with your informers and check what happened. So when that screening happened, 4 of these young men happened to be LTT.
Out of those 17?
Out of those 17.
Okay.
So the rest were sent off home. But these 4 were...
So then these were from the senior citizens or the children, or the 4 out of those 17?
They were LTT militants, active militants.
Which age group were?
Age group, I would say 20 to 25.
Okay.
They're young men, young, fit, or maybe 17 to 25. And one reason why I would say that they were important to the LTTE was because LTTE got very angry about this ambush, and the spot where we laid the ambush, they burnt the undergrowth, all the vegetation around, which blocks vision at ground level.
Okay.
So they burnt all that, which is an indication that they lost somebody important, or somebody important was captured. So we had nothing more to do with that. We had handed them over and we had to move on in a day or so. So we carried on.
Okay. So the aftermath which you said, like you get hold of somebody important, and then the retaliation, or probably the response in which they burned the undergrowth, or so were even these did they laid any eggs or traces that okay, the LTT might be somewhere nearby, or if you could try and figure the location out?
No, we never got information about LTT. That's what you asked me.
Exactly.
No, the locals never gave us information. In fact, in another operation where we worked continuously for 60 hours during that operation, and my head hadn't touched a pillow or the ground during that time. 60 hours.
Okay.
One full day we packed up our camp. That whole night we moved from Palali in Jaffna to Paranthan in Vavuniya sector. The whole night. Early morning we crossed Elephant Pass and then we reached Paranthan. And after we reached Paranthan, my whole team, again like I said, about 60 odd guys that we used to have with us, we had to set up the entire camp, including the battalion headquarters. So the whole day went up in pitching tents and shifting stores and setting up offices, and the cooks immediately got busy, started cooking food, so they never kept us hungry. At night, the adjutant called me and said, Vaidya, you take a patrol in this area. So I said, sir, my men are tired and they're not in a position to go out for patrolling. We've been up for the last 36 hours. So he says, look, it's not my orders, that's CO's orders. So you go and talk to him. I went and talked to him. So my CO called, he says, I want to speak to all your men. My troop, 20 odd guys. So they were lined up. CO comes there and he says, मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप पेट्रोलिंग में जाएं. आपके टीम कमांडर कहते हैं कि आप थक गए हैं, जाने के लिए तैयार है? Everybody said, हाँ साहब, in one voice, unanimous. CO looks at me. I said, if they are ready, I am ready. So we went. Now we were supposed to go for a patrol and just walk around some fields and come back in about 2-3 hours. So we had no food with us, and maybe a water bottle was always with us. So the certain essentials were always there, but
no rations.
No rations and no long term. Like in the jungles, we were prepared for 3 days.
Right.
Here, so we were not prepared that way. So we took off. And one more important thing, is that we did this breakup of the camp, traveling down in heavy rain. And when we set up the camp also, it was continuously raining the whole day. At night, there was a light drizzle, the clouds were low and everything was a light drizzle. Now, walking through, those maps were not very accurate. If the map was 10 years old, somebody had built a track 5 years ago. So that track would not be on the map. So at one point we stopped and we found a track, and I said, either we are coming on the wrong bearing or where are we? So that kind of delirium of being awake 36 hours was maybe playing on my mind maybe.
Right.
So we were a little confused and I didn't know what to do and where to go. So while we were doing that, one guy came along on a cycle, a civilian. So we jumped out from both sides. We normally hide whenever we can and appear only when we have to do something. So we were hiding on the sides of the track, and when this cyclist came along, we pounced on him and brought him down. It was a raised track passing through some paddy fields.
Okay.
So they were low and the track was a little height. So we were on the side of that track. We found a bottle of toddy that he was carrying. So he must have planned to go home and enjoy it, but he got caught with it. Now, I knew that if I put him on the ground, pinch his nose and upturn the bottle in his mouth, he could choke to death. Now, somebody had tried it with me, but I said, no, I'm not going to lie down and drink a bottle of beer. I'll drink it on my own, standing up. So I did that when I was a youngster. So I knew that if I had allowed them to pinch my nose and make me drink a bottle of beer, I wouldn't have done it. So I explained to him, look boss, I'm going to do this to you and you'll drown in your own toddy and nobody will suspect that we have killed you. I didn't mean to kill him. I never would kill an innocent civilian. But the aim of torture is wrong because it's irreversible. But here it is psychological, and it's something that the fellow must feel the threat is very serious and he has to talk. So I told him, you lead us to an LTT militant. That's all we are asking for you.
Upfront.
Huh?
Like it was upfront. Okay, you lead us to the one of the LTT militants.
So you do this much for us, I will not execute my threat. So he said, okay, I will take you to a LTT militant. So he led us to a village. Now, because of the drizzle, because of the clouds and the weather, the dogs did not bark. And we entered the village, we reached a particular house and he says, this house is a militant. So we said, okay, now you carry on, you've done your job, you take your bottle of toddy and push off. And then we surrounded the house and caught a militant. So this militant then took us for a wild goose chase. He says, I'll show you a place where there are 50-60 militants carrying solid weapons and arms and all LTTE and all that. So he made us walk all night and then he made us walk all day till about noon, and we reached that point, and that Shivam Kovil that he said militants are existing was totally deserted.
Okay.
So he just wanted to buy time and he made a fool of us. So that's how it was.
And what is it about the AK-47s?
The AK-47 is a weapon designed by General Kalashnikov in 1947 when he was recovering from some injuries or something. And he designed it in such a way that it has become a legend. The AK-47 was of a forged metal. The body was forged. Now it is pressed sheet steel. It's become much lighter. The version that existed when we were in Sri Lanka was the AK-MS.
Okay.
It fires the intermediate 7.62 cartridge. The length of the cartridge is 37 millimeters. And the caliber is same as SLR, but the bullet is smaller and lighter and the velocity is lower. The result is that when the bullet hits the target, a body, it tumbles and it follows a very unpredictable path inside the body,
Okay.
which causes more damage. And it's been designed to injure and not kill, maybe. Because an injured person is much more of a liability to his team than a dead person.
Right.
So his evacuation requires 4 to 8 people, 4 to carry him at any one time. and all that. So the speciality about this weapon is that it's got a very short barrel, a very short sight radius, that is the distance from the back sight to the front sight. It is remarkably accurate despite the short sight radius, because it has a simple U and a foresight. The distance of the U from your eye is such that when you focus your eye on the foresight, the U gets blurred and forms a image in the center.
Okay.
So all you got to do is align the foresight with the.
Right.
So I found that so remarkable, and the cartridge is tapering, like an SLR cartridge is cylindrical. The AK-47 twists and extracts it. So anything that is twisted and pulled, and it's tapering, so will get extracted very easily. The piston head is very broad and big, and after that it has got some escape vent holes. So there's no gas regulator. Like in an SLR, you had so many stoppages whereas in an AK-47 or AK version, there are no stoppages. The spring of the breech block is a double helical coiled spring, so which makes it unbreakable and stronger than a normal single coil spring. Then it has a folding butt, so when you can carry it inside, almost inside your coat, if you're having a large size.
Concealable in a good.
It is concealable, and it fired 600 rounds per minute, which meant that. But it has a jump, so when you fire from your shoulder, you'll find that the recoil pushes you back and this way, so the burst goes up at 1 o'clock to the point where you aimed. So the aim should be to train soldiers to control the burst to 2-3 rounds. So before the barrel goes way off the target, you should be able to stop the firing so that you conserve ammunition.
Right. And you did mention about the AK-47 and the MiG-21s.
Yeah. Now, similar to the AK-47 is a very simple design. It is very rugged, it's very reliable. You can put it in sand, pull it out, shake it up a little, and it will keep firing. Put it in mud or water. The design of the breech and the slide and everything is such that all the foreign particles will get pushed away and the weapon will keep firing. Now, similarly, the MiG-21, from what I've heard, all my NDA colleagues who have flown MiG-21s, they just love the aircraft. It is unforgiving because it's got a delta wing, it's got a very narrow fuselage, and it travels at a very high speed, so you can't fool around with it. You can't afford to make a mistake. So as long as you're careful with it, but when they come for low level rocket firing or target shooting, that time they're already close to the ground, and maybe a small overreaction, then it also, I think, has a single engine which makes it that much more vulnerable. So if one engine goes off, there's nothing else standby to take it along. But somebody has described the MiG-21 like as a fighter version of the AK-47. So both legends.
And now we also have AK-203s and
the AK's basic design of AK-47 has been modified by many countries.
Right.
The Chinese had the T-56, which they used in our 62 war. The Sri Lankans, when we were in IPKF, they had the T-80 or T-81, Chinese version. Now, the Russians have made the AK-74, which is a very short barrel version, and the caliber is not 5.56 as NATO has made, but it is 5.45.
Okay.
So it's not compatible with the NATO weapons. And it's got a very short, small, compact design. And now we have a license to make AK-203.
Right.
So that should have been done
Decades back.
30 years ago.
Anything else that you would like to add, sir, with regards to the IPKF operations, or the probably currently the awareness that needs to be, the people that need to be acquainted with?
The IPKF was an operation that got thrust upon us. We actually wanted to create peace and leave the place better, but unfortunately, the LTTE lost 13 men who were captured by the Sri Lankan Navy and who committed suicide in early October '87. And maybe we tried to get them released, but we could not succeed. And the LTTE said, now you're an unreliable friend, so they started the hostilities. And the first vehicle that was ambushed by the LTT in the first week of October, after this suicide of 13 people, was our unit vehicle, which was on an administrative duty. And that vehicle was recovered a couple of months later. So that was the way it started, and then the IPKF decided to launch the 5-pronged attack towards Jaffna.
Enforcement and all those things.
Yeah. And then the heliborne operation happened.
Right. So it was all unexpected twists and turns, and then...
Yes. But it kind of a very costly way to call it a battle inoculation. So all of us saw some action over there, but it honed up our soldiering skills. It honed up it improved our bonding and camaraderie. And when we were later deployed in Northeast and in Kashmir, our people did very well. And then this also possibly set up the foundation for the conversion of para-commandos till then into a special forces regiment. And since that experiment has worked, you find that the number of special forces units have increased quite a lot after that.
Thank you very much for your time and all the inputs that you have given so far, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vaibhav. Pleasure.